Welcome everybody. My name's George Day. I'm a senior advisor in the policy and regulation team here at the Energy Systems Catapult. It's great to have the job of chairing this Value in Energy Data webinar, which my colleague Steve Harben does a great job in lining up some really interesting speakers for us. And I think we've got an excellent one today. We're going to be hearing about forecasting contracts for difference from a very knowledgeable speaker in this space. It's Despina Yiakoumi. Have I probably said that wrong, but excuse me if I have, Despina. She's currently energy analytics manager at the Low Carbon Contracts Company, and she's got excellent experience in the energy sector. So before she was doing that, she worked as a researcher in energy economics at the Cyprus Institute in Cyprus. She's also been a senior lecturer at the University of Aberdeen, and most illustriously of all, she was a transport analyst at the Energy Systems Catapult until about a couple of years ago. Quite familiar to a number of us here at ESC. She's also very well qualified. She's got a PhD in energy economics from Aberdeen University, and she was looking at electricity markets and the design of the GB capacity market auctions. So very knowledgeable about that. She's also very interested in inclusion and diversity matters in the energy sector, and she's very involved as well with the Women in Power network. Making sure that women are getting fully represented and involved in the energy sector. So with that, I will pass over to Despina, and she will talk for probably half an hour or so, maybe a little bit longer. We're not quite sure. If you've got questions as Despina goes through her talk, then please use the chat. Just put them in the chat, and I'll pick them up at the end, and we'll go through Q&A at the end, and obviously keep using the chat function for questions, and I will moderate the questions as we get there. Okay, thanks. Over to you, Despina.
Thank you, George, for the lovely introduction. And it's really nice to be back, and it's really nice to see some familiar faces as well. Today I'm gonna have a presentation on how we forecast the contracts for difference here at LCCC. First of all, I will just allow you a couple of minutes to read the disclaimer before I move to the agenda and the presentation. So continue with the actual topic of the presentation. I will start by describing in general what LCCC, Low Carbon Contracts Company, does, a bit of a background on the CFD scheme. Then I will deep dive into how we actually forecast the cost of this scheme, and as a result, how we calculate the interim rebate and the total reserve amount. I will also explain what are these, what is the ILR and the TRA. And before finishing, I will present what were our forecasting challenges, especially the last year where the market was really volatile and really uncertain. And then I will finish with what is our position on data and data openness, and where you can access the data we're producing. So starting, LCCC is an independent, non-for-profit private company owned by the Secretary of State for Business. And our current role is to be the CFD counterparty for contracts for differences, which is basically we manage these contracts with low carbon electricity generators. And we're also the settlement body for the capacity market scheme, which is implemented to improve security of supply. So one of our main aims at the LCCC is accelerating net zero. And we're doing that by managing the contracts for difference project, which our portfolio is increasing quarter by quarter. We're also providing support to capacity market changes focused on low carbon flexible solutions. We are also advising the government and DESNES for the development of new schemes and other market designs changes that they are planning to implement. And some of the new schemes is hydrogen scheme, the carbon capture, use and storage, the nuclear. You can read more about it in this section in our website. I will share the slides later on. So to continue to give a bit of a background on the CFD scheme. This scheme is in operation since 2015 and is designed to provide revenue certainty to intermediate to low carbon generators over their contract length, which is approximately 15 years for all the contracts. The intention to this is to facilitate the increased private investment in low carbon electricity generation, and the electricity suppliers fund the scheme, and therefore this scheme is called supplier obligations, the payments basically. So we have different generators under the scheme, which is wind, solar, biomass, nuclear, tidal, and the payments to generators, as I said, come from the suppliers. I will analyze that further in the next couple of slides. So how did the CFD scheme did up to now, and how has it helped the renewable generation? As of July 2023, we have seen that the renewable generation was up to 40 to 50%. That has increased a lot since 2010, which was 7%. And currently we have 165 projects within our CFD portfolio. Currently only 37 are live. And the capacity of our live contracts are 6.4 gigawatt, and this is expected to increase a lot through the next couple of years, reaching around 40% of country's total generating capacity. So as the title of the presentation says, we are forecasting under the CFD scheme. We need to forecast under the regulations to determine the scheme's cost and give notice to supplier a quarter ahead. So in order to do that, we are forecasting different elements. So we first, as you see in the green circle, we forecast the generation of the contracts for different plants for each hour. We forecast also the hourly price of electricity, and this gives us, this is more a generalized representation of how the CFD cost is calculated. I will deep dive later on, but in general, we take the forecast generation, we take the forecast price, and then the expected payments to and from generators are calculated. This scheme, its aim is to provide greater certainty to suppliers and by extension, reduce cost for consumers. That's why we're providing our forecasting. And except the 1 quarter in advance forecast, we are also provide 24 months advance forecast. Now, how do we forecast the CFD cost? First, I mentioned that we forecast our CFD generation. We are producing projections for the future generation. So each contract specifies a target date, which the plants are meant to start generating under the CFD scheme, as well as their contract capacity. We use those information, and we also use some forecast load factors for our intermediate generators for the solar and the wind. And also we're getting information from Elexon regarding the plant availability and any plant outages. And based on that, we are able to produce forecasts for the CFD generation. We usually don't use any forecast generation that comes from the generators, as historically these forecasts have been inaccurate. And the graph on the left shows our expected generation in our portfolio. This includes contracts up to allocation round 3. And allocation round 4 is not included in this graph. It should be updated by the end of September. And you can access it also from our website. And what we can see from the graph is that the generation in our portfolio is set to grow by around 20% over the next 5 years. And every allocation round, so we have allocation rounds where generators can participate and can earn a contract. And each allocation round, we're expecting only to accelerate the growth of the total low carbon generation. We have seen how we forecast the generation. Now let's see how the generation forecast might deviate, the actual might deviate from the forecast. So there are several drivers that might cause generation to develop differently as what we have predicted. Mainly is due to weather variations, outages, and projected delays. So we have a large portion of our portfolio is consisted by wind and solar generators. So the weather conditions affect tremendously our forecast. Also, we have delays that might affect the forecast due to technical problems. So if we expect that one plant will come online the next quarter, and that plant, due to technical reasons, does not come online, then we have deviations from our forecast. And also, we have noticed delays in projects caused by price incentives, especially the last year, due to the really high prices. We have noticed that some of our generators decided to go merchant, meaning that they didn't want to start their CFD contract in order to capture the higher prices. And I will explain what I mean to capture higher prices with our next slide, where it illustrates how the scheme actually works. So each contract has a strike price, and the strike price can be seen by the blue line in the graph, the horizontal line. And this strike price is a pre-agreed price and is adjusted each year for inflation. So what it means is that for each hour of the day, the generators under their CFD contract, they are certain that they will receive this amount of money for every megawatt hour they're producing. And this is compared against their market reference price. So the market reference price in the graph can be seen by the dotted lines here. And it's a traded wholesale market electricity price used as a reference for any top-up values to the generator. We have a different market reference price for intermediate generation, which is called intermediate market reference price, and different for base load, which is called base load market reference price. And basically, when the market reference price, as can be seen on the blue part of the graph, is lower than the strike price, then the CFD contract, through their CFD contract, generators are top up their difference. Now, on the other side, if we have higher market price than the strike prices, then the generators need to pay LCCC the difference back, and this money returned to suppliers. And in general, the CFD payments to generators are recovered, as I said, from suppliers and are recovered through the interim levy rate. I will continue by explaining what is the interim levy rate and what is the total reserve amount. So we have three main payments that consist the CFD cost, basically. We have the interim levy payments, which is used to cover expected payments to CFD generators in a quarter. So this is meant to cover the actual CFD scheme cost. They're calculated on a daily basis, and this is recovered by the interim levy rate, the ILR, which is £1 per megawatt hour value, which is charged to suppliers based on the supplier's demand. We have data reconciliation daily for this, and also it's followed by the quarterly reconciliation. For people who like equations, I put this slide together just to explain a more mathematical way how the ILR is calculated. So as I said, is used to cover expected payments from generators, which this is the CFD scheme cost, and is calculated basically by the difference of the strike price and the market price multiplied by the generation we have in the CFD portfolio divided by the total electricity demand in our system. At the bottom of the slide, I summarize what parameters we're forecasting using our models. So we are forecasting the strike price is given from the contract. So we are forecasting the market reference price, the generation, and the demand. The market reference price is determined based on the historic commodity prices and also any plant data availability, running costs. And we have in our model, the marginal price is determined, and then we have our market reference price. We are forecasting also our generation using weather forecast, plant availability, and plant start dates. And we have also our forecast for demand, where we use weather forecast and also historic demand and historic demand trends. So that's the ILR. Now we're moving to another component of the supplier payments, which is the reserve payments. So as we all understand, when we're forecasting, especially electricity prices, there are a lot of uncertainties around that. So in order to make sure that we have always enough money to pay generators, we have the reserve payments, which are used to cover the uncertainty around the forecast cost. And this is derived from the total reserve amount, the TRA, and this is apportionated to each supplier based on the market share of the suppliers. This is reconciled quarterly at the end of the quarter. So just to give you an example, if we manage to have a perfect forecast and the ILR payments cover the CFD cost exactly, then what happens at the end of the quarter, the TRA is returned back to the suppliers. So it's a buffer just to make sure we have enough money, but LCCC doesn't own that buffer. It's given back to the suppliers when it's not used, and for the next quarter, we request a new amount. So for anyone who is more interested to see how we actually calculate the TRA, our model creates a stochastic projection of net cash flows for each day, for each simulation. We're using Monte Carlo simulations, and for each determination run, for each quarter, we're using usually 10,000 simulations. To calculate the TRA, we're taking the maximum shortfall within each simulation, and then we take the 95 percentile of that, and that is how the TRA is determined. Based on the graph on the right is an example. So we can see on the x-axis the total reserve amount, and the x-axis is a probability. So here the 95% probability says 4.3 million. This is an example when our portfolio was really small. Now with our portfolio, we usually request a TRA between 300 million and 400 million, to give you an example of how big is our portfolio and with how much money we're dealing in LCCC regarding the CFD scheme. We have also a third parameter that is part of the CFD scheme cost, is the operational cost payment, and is used to cover the operational cost of LCCC of administrating the CFD scheme, and is funded by the operational cost levy. And this is again charged to suppliers based on their demand. For this for this value, we have no reconciliation. I talk about what we are currently forecasting, how is the CFD scheme functioning, and now just to give you some live examples of what might be the challenges from forecasting. So the scheme has typically made generators payments. So prices between 2015 and 2020 have fluctuated between £20 per megawatt hour to £60 per megawatt hour. Up to last quarter, 6.4 billion have been paid to generators within the scheme since the start of the quarter. And the scheme has proved to provide efficient and cost-effective price stabilization by reducing the exposure to the volatile wholesale electricity prices. And that's why we have seen a tremendous increase in our low-carbon portfolio in the UK. Now, the last year, between 2021 and 2022, has been really challenging for forecasting and the energy markets in general. We have seen prices up to 5 and 10% higher than normal. We have seen daily spikes up to £600 per megawatt hour, and hourly spikes more than 1,000. And this example was taken especially from December last year. This uncertainty was driven mainly by security of supply concerns, resulting in particular from the continuation of the war in Ukraine. And except from making our forecasting much more difficult, and we have seen large deviations between the forecast CFD cost and the actual CFD cost, we have also seen variations in our CFD forecast generation, because we have seen something that we haven't seen historically, that high prices created different dynamics in the market, meaning that some of our generators were choosing to delay their CFD start dates. So they were choosing to go merchant, and they were not starting their CFD generation. As a result of this, we have developed some different mechanics inside our team, so we can deal with these variations in start dates. And also we are investigating on how we have investigated and we're continuously investigating how we can improve our price forecast. So to summarize, the main uncertainties around the CFD scheme cost is the market reference price. We have the intermediate and base load reference prices. The IMRP is daily, and it's a average of the power exchange prices, and the BMRP is set for one season and is constant for the whole season, and is based on the average season ahead prices. So the IMRP, as you can understand, carries high uncertainties, and any spikes in the market can create, because of any distortions, are difficult to capture by forecasting. We have also the generation forecast, which determines how much we need to pay generators, and also carries high uncertainty. And we have also the electricity demand, which determines how much income LCCC gets from suppliers. And this we have seen through historically is quite stable. Sudden changes are unlikely. We have noticed big changes in demand during COVID, of course, and we had to adjust our methodology during that period, because it was some changes we have never seen before. So that's about the forecast and how we're treating uncertainties in our team. I would just want to briefly touch our policy regarding data openness. We're supporting open data, and we have developed and maintained CFD dashboards and data portal. In our CFD dashboards, we summarize CFD scheme data and metrics, which are relevant for analysts, managers, policymakers, suppliers. Data portal is easily download data that LCCC publishes on our dashboard. We are in the procedure of reviewing our dashboards in our data portal to improve the visualization of them. If you want to have a look, I have put in one slide some examples of our dashboards. Please feel free, and if you have any questions, please come back to me. That was for today. I'm not sure if anyone has any questions.
Great. Many thanks, Despina. Really interesting presentation. Quite a lot of technical content there, and you know, quite an important scheme to kind of keep running smoothly, because it's becoming crucial to you know, more and more of the generation mix, and it's very crucial to investor confidence as well. So very interesting to hear about some of the mechanics and how that operates in practice. We've got quite a number of questions actually popping up in the chat, so I think probably the easiest thing is if I just take them in the order they've appeared, and I'll read them out, and then I'll hand over to Despina to kind of have a go at answering. And then if the questioner sort of feels that I haven't quite got it right, or they want to come in and just maybe clarify something, then do feel free to kind of appear on camera and come in. I think you should be able to do that, Tabitha, if people unmute themselves, if it seems appropriate. So the first question is from Jeffrey Ho, who says, as the market reference for the UK's CFD is hourly, does your team, Despina, do all the forecasting of volumes and prices on an hourly basis, or is it simplified to daily or weekly or something else?
We're doing the forecast hourly. So we're forecasting our hourly prices and hourly generation.
Okay. Jeffrey, is there anything else, any follow-up on that?
No, that's helpful. Thank you very much.
Yep, great. Just sort of one that popped into my mind when I was listening to your description of it was when you were talking about the interim levy rate. It's a sort of daily calculated charge. Is it actually dispersed on a daily basis to the generators?
Yes, it's daily payments. We request daily payments from suppliers, and we are paying generators on a daily payments. On a daily basis, we are on a pay-as-basis. So if we don't get money from generators, from suppliers, sorry, we cannot pay suppliers. But up to now, we had no issues around that, and we have also different mechanics to make sure that we always have enough money, like the TRA and some other mechanics in place to make sure that we always have this amount of money.
Right. Okay. So it really is just the money comes in on a daily basis and goes straight out on a daily basis, and then you have
Yes.
this sort of slush fund. I know that's the wrong word for it, but you know, the TRA, which is
yes.
your buffer, which makes
Yeah.
sure that if there's any sort of cash flow crisis or something that comes up, that
Yeah.
you're able to meet your obligations. Brilliant. Okay. So the next question is from somebody called Dr. Stephen Harman, who asks, does the incentives from the CFD reduce as the scheme becomes more successful, since it would reduce the electricity prices, and what could help support these challenges? Do feel free to, Steve, to come in and support that question if you need. But Despina, what do you say to that? So
we have seen that the incentives from the CFD have not been decreased, because we have seen more and more plans to come into our CFD to participate in the scheme. So last year we had 98 contracts signed, out of the 165 we currently have, and we have another allocation round in September. So currently the scheme looks really successful and still it looks like it's attractive for our generators. And for any future challenges that may come, we have our policy team that is more equipped than the analytics team to have to see how, in collaboration with us, to see how we can deal with any challenges that may come in the future.
Okay, great. So the next question is from Robbie Morrison, who asks, are changing weather patterns considered when casting forward over a 15-year CFD horizon? And Robbie says, difficult to implement, I know, but yeah.
So forecasting, as you said, forecasting weather is really difficult. We are currently offering 24 months ahead forecast. So we're taking in mind, we are doing this a bit differently. We are taking historic weather and we're creating load factors based on the historic weather. That's a really good question actually about changing weather patterns. It's something that we are currently investigating because the model we currently have, it's been since 2015, is quite old. And I'm happy to say that our modeling team has recently built a new one, so we will be able to use the most up-to-date model in the next couple of quarters. And definitely this is something that we will incorporate in our new model as well.
When you say most up-to-date model, do you mean up-to-date weather model?
No, it's up-to-date model of how to forecast the CFD. We include also in that model, it also includes weather forecast. So this is something we can include in our future considerations about the changing weather patterns.
Okay, and anything else on that, Robbie?
And just to say something here, because we're taking historical values, as the weather changes, it includes also the changes from the historic values. So if this year, for example, is really different than the other year, in 1 year from now, going back, we'll be able to have access to the last year of different values for weather, basically.
Right. So windiness or
yes.
sunniness or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So the next question is from Sebastian, who wonders. He says maybe this was answered already, and I think possibly it was, but he asks, who is financing the CFD scheme and what percentage of generators are in the scheme? Maybe you can just briefly remind us of that.
Yeah, so CFD scheme is paid by suppliers, and that means that it's paid by the consumers. And that's why we're making sure that we keep the cost as low as possible. So we don't increase the burden to the consumers. And what percentage of generators are in the scheme? So currently we have 37 live generators, which is approximately 6.4 gigawatt of capacity. And all of our portfolio, if it comes live, so it depends, they have different milestones in the next couple of years, is 165 contracts, which is around 29.3 gigawatts, which is around 40% of the capacity in the energy markets.
Wow, yeah, that's a lot of capacity coming through in the pipeline. Yeah. And is that mainly sort of some quite big offshore wind schemes and things like that?
Yeah, we have big offshore, onshore plants. We have solar, we have tidal, we have biomass as well, and we have also one nuclear plant.
Aha, yeah, okay, that's probably quite a big one. Okay, The next question is from David Orr, who asks, how are generators paid for availability of base load?
So we are not paid generators for availability. We are only paying them for what they are actually producing. So we are treating the base load and the intermediate generators the same. The only difference is the price, the market reference price. For the base load plants, we have the base load reference price. So when we're doing the payments towards the base load generators, we are comparing the strike price to the base load reference price, and we're paying them based on the pounds per megawatt hour. So it's basically of how much they are actually generating and not for their availability. If they don't generate anything, they don't get paid.
Okay, just on the I'm going to jump one question because I think this one might be linked a little bit to that one. So somebody here asks, to help contextualize things, can you please explain in a little bit more detail how the base load reference price is calculated versus the intermittent reference price? Are there any sources of data, of weather data, you found to be more or less useful than others?
Okay, so we have, I can send you a link later on as well. It's in the EMRS website, exactly the methodology of how it's calculated. So we have the season ahead forward contracts. So let's say for the winds, and we have two seasons, winter and summer. Winter starts in October and ends end of March, and we have April that ends end of September for the summer season. In order to calculate, the BMRP basically is calculated taking the average of the season ahead for the season ahead prices before. So for October now, the BMRP will be calculated based on the forward prices for winter, and these forward prices have been traded during April until end of September. So we will only able to know the exact value of the BMRP beginning of October. So you take the average of the season ahead prices that was traded one season before for the season you are interested. That's how the BMRP is calculated. And for the IMRP, we have two power exchanges. So how it's calculated is the weighted average of those power exchanges. And the average of those power exchanges gives us the hourly IMRP, basically.
Yeah, quite a technical area, that one.
Yes.
Okay, Sam Young asks, when you say the generators' forecasts have historically been inaccurate, why do you think that is? And have you looked at whether that is true for all generators or whether some are more accurate for their sites than your forecasts for them? So yes, interesting question.
So this has been analyzed before my time on LCCC. And basically, specifically smaller generators, they don't have the capability probably to make the forecast. So we have seen they're quite inaccurate. We are having we are getting some information from some generators, which is more confidential of how much they are planning to generate. But we are also, that helps us, for example, to set the a load factor for the plants if we believe that information is accurate. So there are some generators who have seen to provide some accurate forecasts, and there are some other generators who have seen their forecast not to provide much value in our forecast. So we have made the decision to do our own generation forecast.
Okay, and Jeffrey Ho asks a follow-up to that one is to add to that, have generators' forecasts historically been too high or too low?
You mean the generators' forecast that we do, or the generators' forecast that the generators provide us?
I think he means
the ones they submitted, yeah.
Okay, well, basically they stopped submitting forecast for the past years, so I'm not really sure about that. And even if they did, I'm afraid that that information is quite confidential, and we cannot really comment on that.
Yeah, I was starting to think about that. I was wondering whether there were some tensions with some data that you get, which is commercially sensitive, and your commitment to sort of data openness.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, definitely there are, and some of the assumptions we are using to perform our forecast, we are using confidential information. So even we're doing, I forgot to mention that we are doing quarterly webinars. Our next webinar is in October. You can go into our website and you can see any information regarding our past webinars and the recordings and when the next webinar will be available. And some of the information, we always say that some of our assumptions regarding start dates and load factors of the plants, it's also based on confidential information we get from some generators.
Yeah. Okay. Sam Young also asks, what accuracy measures do you monitor for your forecasts, and roughly what accuracy do you get?
Okay, well, I will invite you to come and join our webinars where we present our accuracy basically on our forecast. And for now, it's something we are also investigate how we can implement changes. But for now, we're just comparing the actual with the forecast to get a variance and to see how we have to see how the quarter turned out. And basically it's also we are checking also the changes we are making in our methodology in order to capture the different dynamics in the market, and we're discussing all of this in our webinars, so please feel free to have a look in past webinars and come and join us also in October to learn more about this.
Great. Yes, other webinars are available. So Kunzu has a couple of interesting questions here, asking, are there any exceptions when spot prices turn to negative? So I think that's a question around how do you handle negative prices, and then also asking, maybe you covered it, but which spot price between EPEX and Nord Pool is used for reference? I think those are the two exchanges, and any potential concerns with the divergence between the two exchanges?
Okay, really good questions, all of them. What I would like to say first, the negative prices. We have some, there is a regulation regarding the negative prices, and it's basically some of our plants, older plants, they have no provision of negative prices, meaning that when there are negative prices, they are still receiving payments during those hours. There are some plants, they have 6 hours. So if there are more than 6 consecutive hours of negative prices, then they're not getting paid. And there are other contracts are not allowed any negative prices. So the allocation round last year, which is allocation round 4, and all the new rounds, there is a provision that the generators cannot get paid during negative hours.
So that was basically an update, a sort of policy update to the design of the CFD contracts.
Exactly, because as the markets evolve, there are things that even policymakers realize when the changes come, because you sometimes see things in the markets that they have never happened before. So as the markets and the dynamics evolve, also the regulations evolve.
Perfect. Yeah. And then
the
on
other,
the EPEX and Nord Pool
yes.
differences, yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, it's the day ahead prices. I think I missed to say that. So we're taking the day ahead prices of EPEX and Nord Pool, and the weighted average of the two is the IMRP, and the weighted average also deals with the differences between the two exchanges. So depending on the volume that has been traded in the exchanges, then that's the importance also on how these prices are used to calculate the IMRP.
Right, great. Okay. So Nigel Williams has a question. What assumptions has LCCC reached for the number of AR4 projects that have come to fruition in light of inflationary pressure bearing on contract holders? So I think that's a bit about the complaints from the industry that there's a lot of cost pressure. Is it possible that some contract holders may elect to enter other frameworks such as corporate PPAs on the basis that these might deliver more value compared to their CFD prices over the contract duration? Yes, very interesting question.
That's really interesting. Unfortunately, this is kind of information we cannot share about how we think therefore, because therefore has already happened. So we cannot comment on any decisions that our generators will make, that the generators we are already in contract with. If you are interested to see what contracts we currently have and what is their official expected target day, you can see it from our website. I can share the link to the CFD register. And of course, it's a free market. If they choose to go to a different scheme, generators are free to do so. We will be able to see more everyone in September, when the next allocation round for CFD is going to happen. Because the information of who is participating in the allocation rounds is confidential. So after the results are out, we will be able to assess and make and have conclusions about how the scheme is evolving.
Right. So for everything that's contracted already, you've got an assumed sort of commissioning date or start date for generation, and that's publicly available.
Yes, so I'm sharing now the link is the CFD register. And what I have to say is that, as I already mentioned, it doesn't mean that our assumptions on the start date is based on this register. We are making our own assumptions based on market conditions, based on confidential information from generators. But the information that it's in the CFD register is what we can share with the public, basically.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Right, and I guess the other thing that might come into play there is as you were pointing out, the incentives created by the higher prices to maybe delay the start of the CFDs. Yeah, well, so that schemes can come online and benefit from the higher prices that are around. Yeah.
Yeah, and to say something on in addition to that, in allocation round 5 and onwards, there is a change in the regulations where it says that LCCC can force somehow a generator to start their CFD contract if we see that they are generating, so we can protect consumers from these dynamics of the market, that their prices are really high and some of the generators choose not to start their CFD contract.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So David Orr asks, what are the subsidies for carbon generation by price as the technology becomes more mature, and how often are they reassessed?
So you mean by strike prices? So strike prices,
I think so.
Yeah. So strike prices is not determined by us. So unfortunately, I cannot offer any advice on this. You can find more information in the MRS website and DESNES. but LCCC has no, we don't set the strike prices.
Right. Okay. Samuel Young asks, what's the ratio of TRA to ILR payments? He says, looking at one of the charts which had quarterly ILR totaling around £500 million, and what you said about TRA being 300 to 400 million pounds, does that mean suppliers are effectively being asked to have almost 1 quarter's worth of ILR kind of on deposit with LCCC, I guess he means, yeah.
So the ratio is not something constant. TRA is calculated based on a Monte Carlo simulation, which includes also the historic volatility. So based on the historic volatility, the TRA is determined. So if we are expecting, we are forecasting basically also the volatility in the market. So if we are expecting high volatility in the coming months, then the TRA will be higher. If we are not expecting high volatility, then the TRA will be lower. There is no constant ratio between TRA and ILR payments. But yes, we are asking suppliers to give us this buffer, but to highlight, we return that amount of money at the end of each quarter. So it's not something that we are keeping, basically.
Do you pay interest?
No, there's no interest.
Right. Yeah, interesting. But I mean, obviously that underlines the importance of the forecasting function that you're running in the first place, you know, because I guess the suppliers would be get pretty peeved if you're seen to be holding more money on deposit than is really required. Yeah, interesting. Okay, and finally there was another question, which is a separate question from VC Room Guest. I'm not quite sure who that is. Are there any sources of weather data you found to be more or less useful than others?
I'm afraid I cannot make a clear comment on this, but what I can say is that as a public body, whenever we need to renew our contract from where we get the weather data, we ask specific, we ask some specifications from the providers, and based on what they have to offer, we make our choice based on money and the quality of the data. And of course, there are some providers who are providing more actual data, some providers who are providing more simulated data, but unfortunately, I cannot make a comment on that. What I would say is like this is like we're trying to be regarding the data openness. We are working on this to be more open regarding our code and regarding our sources of inputs. So it's something that we are currently working on, and we are going to update our website in January approximately. So be more patient with us. We are working towards making things more available to everyone.
Okay, great. Well, I think we've gone through all the questions that I've got in the chat there. And we're nearly up to the hour mark, but I've just got sort of one last general question, if I can squeeze it in the last couple of minutes. So which is from me, and I was just interested to learn a little bit more about the advisory role that you mentioned for LCCC for the government on new scheme design. Maybe you could just say a little bit about how LCCC is getting involved there in advising on the design of new schemes. Okay.
So we have a policy team, of course, that gets involved in the different advisory needs that the government has. Something that I was involved, it's also we have new schemes coming online. One that I was involved is a nuclear RAP, which is basically supporting nuclear generation, and it's about the Sizewell nuclear plant. So for that, what what the advisory you have provided is basically a review of the regulations, any policy advice we think as from the forecasting aspect, from legal aspect. So this is how we're providing, this is what kind of advice we are offering. And also more specifically, as I said, the policy team, any changes that I'm not sure if I can speak about any of the topics they're working on. So any changes that they want to implement, they come to LCCC and they come to our policy team, and we have close communication regarding that, and providing analysis they might need, and consultation and all of that.
Great. Wonderful. Well, thanks very much, Despina. It's been a really interesting presentation. A lot there, and very quite a demanding job that you've got. So it's good to know that it's in safe hands, and clearly, you know, quite a bit of work to be done to keep the machine running smoothly, as I'm sure it is already. So many thanks for that. Thanks everybody for your questions. Steve, do you want to come in and just mention the next webinar that we've got in the pipeline?
I can do, yes. So thanks very much, joining Despina. Yeah, we have another, I think in a few weeks' time. I'll be advertising it through the normal channels. This will be on psychographics, I believe, with customer data. So it should be very exciting. But yeah, that should that'll be where we usually are, and we'll be sharing that as well online. But I think people are registered for that one originally. We'll get an email about that as well, because it was one that had to be moved.
Okay. Great. Well, that's all for now, folks. Really interesting session, and thanks everybody, and thanks particularly to Despina. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.